Hey guys, welcome back. History with Hilbert here, and today I'm making a video looking at what is a guru. Now, most of you will be familiar with the term guru, but how many of you knew that the word guru means teacher in the Sanskrit language? Sanskrit, fun fact, is a language from India, and I believe it's the oldest still spoken language in the world. Now, guru in this sense is often used in association with the Hindu religion, as well as other religions from the East like Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism. Now, in the Hindu context, a guru is a spiritual, often a philosophical leader and a teacher, as that's what the word means. Now, often these gurus would also have disciples who would try to learn from the guru and essentially become a guru themselves, although I'll get into this later in the video. Now, there is an important distinction that I'm going to make straight away within sort of the overarching word and definition of guru. There is another term, which is Satguru, and Satguru is another Sanskrit word, a compound this time, and it means true teacher. So if we look at gurus in history, they play a very important part in ancient India. And in India, there's actually a quote that's about gurus, that there were so many of them, that gurus are as numerous as lamps in every house, but oh goddess, difficult to find is a guru who lights up everything like a sun. So what we can ascertain from this is that there were lots of gurus around in ancient India, but not necessarily that they were all on the same level and that they could all give you what you wanted to get from them. So what would someone go to a guru expecting to learn? Well, in Eastern religions, the main goal and sort of the purpose of following these philosophical traditions is to reach a state that is alternatively known as moksha or nirvana, or to us in the West as enlightenment. Now, enlightenment is the end of all suffering, but to get there you have to do an awful lot of suffering, which isn't just in one life, but often it's in many lives, as the Eastern traditions, most of the religions believe in some kind of rebirth or reincarnation on a cycle which is called samsara, which is a cycle of suffering. Yet if you do good things, then you'll get karma, which means your time will be shortened. If you do bad things, karma works against you. This is a very simplified version of how it goes, but this is just for now how I'm going to explain it. With the help of a guru, oftentimes people think that they can get there faster by doing this, that this will essentially bridge a gap. Enlightenment is as much about living many lives as it is about understanding knowledge about the self and about the world around them. So with the help of a guru, many people think that because the gurus are themselves often enlightened or are close to enlightenment and very knowledgeable, that this will help them to get there themselves. Now, some other differences between a guru then and a Satguru. The main difference is the practice of Hinduism which is followed, and what I mean by this is Advaita and Advaita Vedanta. Now, the Satgurus often followed Advaita Vedanta, and essentially what this means is that they believed in a monist tradition, and monism is essentially where everything in the world belongs to one. They believe that essentially everything that you see, feel, touch, hear is part of Maya, which is an illusion. Now, this illusion is what's separating them from the one God. Now, you might be thinking, Hinduism, hold on a minute, they believe in lots of gods. Not quite, it's more complicated because the Hindus essentially believe in many different versions of one God. And when I'm saying Hindus, I mean some Hindus, because there's always ones that don't follow the rule. But this is just a very simple version. So a guru, on the other hand, usually lived with a family. They usually had a married life, they had possessions and a house, they were allowed a social life. Whereas the Satguru, who came a bit later, they wouldn't be married, they'd be unmarried, often virgins. They would have no possessions and no friends. I mean, this makes it sound very simple, but it was a very hard life being a Satguru. Now, often in the earlier days, you'd have gurus who did just have a married life, and when a student or a shishya, as they were called, would come to learn from the guru, they would bring firewood to the guru's house as a sign that they are willing to work alongside the guru and to participate and uphold the household while they are learning. Now, where did these gurus live in India? Generally, they'd live out in the countryside, in what we call the Gurukul, which is the house of the guru. And the Gurukul generally sprang up in India around important Hindu temples. And often the Gurukul would be out in the forest, out a bit off the beaten track so that they could study and focus, and especially later on when you had the Satguru, this was the case. In southern India as well, you'd find that sometimes you'd have Gurukul attached to the sides of temples, so people could obviously go to the temple and then learn all about the Vedic text. Although the caste system was a highly restrictive structure that split society into different groups, it's thought that people from all castes could become a guru and could go and study under a guru. And it's thought as well that women as well as men could go and do this, although this was subject to the time period in question. So in the older Rigvedic tradition, it was probably limited to the upper Brahmin class, and also only to men who could do this, as during this period the Hindu beliefs, or essentially the pre-Hindu Vedic beliefs, were very much restrictive. The priest class was essentially the ruling class, and everyone under it was subject to those rules. However, later on, with liberalizing movements such as the Shramanic movement, the Bhakti movement as well, women and other castes were generally allowed to join in and become gurus as well as learn from gurus. Now these movements swept across India, which was where Hinduism was obviously from, and the most famous of these movements has got to be the religion we now call Buddhism, as the founder of Buddhism, Siddhartha Gautama, now known to us as the Buddha, was also someone who would be considered a guru back in the day. While the Gurukul would have been very simple and primitive to begin with, the gurus were obviously trying to seek spiritual enlightenment through trying to get rid of as many things, as much maya, of this deceptive nature of objects and pleasure and things like this. They'd keep everything very simple. But as time went on, these places that were usually off the beaten track and in the middle of forests or swamps to begin with, they would attract a lot of people who would come and learn from the gurus. And as time went on, universities and huge learning complexes would spring up around the original sites of these Gurukul, and you'd have lots of different gurus teaching people a whole range of different subjects. The Kathopanishad says that gurus were teaching people the different skills of Dhaniravidra, which was archery, Arthastra, which was economics, and Natyashastra, which was drama, and even Kamashastra, sexology. Now I'm going to take a look at a bit more of a modern day guru who didn't live too long ago. Now his name is Shivadana Saraswati, although he's also known as Swami Shivadana and by other names as well, but essentially it's the guy on the right. Now he was born in 1887 in the village of Kupiswamy, and he studied medicine at the medical school in Tanjore before travelling to British Malay to work as a doctor for 10 years. Now he became famous there for giving care to the poor even if they couldn't afford it, and he already started to build up a sort of saint-like aura around him. Now after 10 years he felt like he wasn't filling his spiritual potential and thought he'd be able to help people better in different ways. After a decade in Malaysia, he went back to India, and whilst in India he visited several Indian holy sites such as the old city of Varanasi as well as Nashik, before heading back north to the Himalayas, where he was taught by a guru. After his studies with the guru, he went to several important Hindu sites in both the very north and the very south of India, like Rameswaram, Pondicherry, Badranath and Kedarnath. While he was on his travels, he met several esteemed Hindus, such as going to the ashram of Sri Aurobindo, as well as meeting Shuddhahamanda Bharati and the esteemed Hindu sage Ramana Maharshi. Many disciples came to live with him for guidance, and a sort of mini community grew up around him. So in 1936, Shivadana founded the Divine Life Society, which distributed spiritual literature to help others through their philosophical problems. And if you visit the Rishikesh today, then you can still see the Divine Life Society Centre, the original one, on the banks of the Ganges, as well as going to one of many different centres founded by his disciples around the world today. Now he's also famous for developing a style of yoga known as the Yoga of Synthesis. He passed into a state which his disciples called San Samadhi, on the 14th of July 1963, or to us that's simply known as death. Gurus are seen in a bit of a different light, as historically they were a very important part of society, and while gurus are still very much revered today, they're less treated like gods than they used to be, and rather just people who can help you to reach enlightenment. A good example, however, today of gurus being controversial is that their overzealous followers tend to give them godlike status. However, this can lead to allegations of grooming, quite often which are correct, as well as abuse of members of the guru's sects, with thousands of people protesting when they're charged. A recent case of Guru Singh, who was charged with abusing people, and 30 people died when they started rioting about him being prosecuted for these charges. So you see that gurus are still a very important part of life in India. However, there are others who still pretty much do what they used to do, go out into the forests like they've always done and live a life of poverty in search of divine truth. Alright everyone, so thank you for watching. This has been my video on what is a guru, and some little nuances and other examples there, as well as the life obviously of Shivadana Swami. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. I hope you'll tune in again next time.